Hi there, good afternoon. I'm Cara Devaney, I'm a corporate strategist, and welcome to this next session on getting you and your business ready to work with corporates. So, whether this is your first session, you're watching this out of sequence, or whether you've been joining in already with these sessions, welcome. This is the one that's probably the biggest thing that gets in people's way. So, that's what we're going to cover today. So I work with lots of different entrepreneurs who, when we get through all the practical work to get them ready to work with corporates, sometimes this little thing crops up that's been happening to them before, and that's that what's going on in there gets in the way of the work, and that happens to people at all different levels of maturity of their business, all different levels of success of their business, because we've all got a brain, and sometimes our brains are a little bit mischievous, aren't they? Because they're programmed to keep us safe, and sometimes when we're doing something new and a bit fearful, our brain likes to send us all the reasons why we maybe shouldn't do that because it might be dangerous, and then that can get in our own way. So this is the one about getting you into the right headspace for working with corporates. You could call it a mindset one. And what I'm going to say is I am not a mindset coach. What I'm going to talk to you today is based on my personal experience and my experience of working with other people. I do have a background in leadership and business development, but I'm not a mindset coach. That's not what I do for a living. Maybe I do it a bit for fun. So here's what we're going to cover today. What we're going to cover today is what might be going on for you. So what are the thoughts that are maybe cropping up when you think about doing this and then think, oh, I'm not so sure, what about? So we'll cover what some of those might be, because sometimes there's comfort in knowing that, oh, actually that's getting into other people's heads, so it might actually not be just unique to me. Going to talk about what if you feel a bit different. So what if there are some things going on for you that you feel so different that you feel that's a barrier for you. Going to talk about the type of people who do work in corporates and with corporates. And then I'm going to give you some tips at the end on what you're going to do about moving forward from this point onwards. What I would say is if you're listening just now and you haven't got a pen and a piece of paper, while you're listening to this next bit, that would be a good opportunity to grab a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm going to get you to do a little exercise at the end that's going to help you with the mindset piece. So if you can grab a pen and a piece of paper, or a pencil and a piece of paper, or a quill, whatever your preferred writing implement is, go ahead and grab that, and we'll do that at the end. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what might be going on for you. Hi Sarah, see the lovely Sarah Fletcher joining us today. So what might be going on for you? What things might be in your head that make you think, oh, I could work with corporate, except and then these little thoughts come in. So some people say self-sabotaging, but I was working with someone recently and I've been reading a lot of her stuff. I wasn't working with her actually, I did a meeting about working together. And she was saying that sometimes self-sabotage is actually self-protection, and that's where it's coming from. And I really like that framing of it, because I thought that's actually a gentler way. So rather than thinking, oh my goodness, I'm working so hard, I'm doing all the things, and now I'm also self-sabotaging, if we see it as actually, no, I'm self-protecting, but I don't need that protection. It's a much gentler way of being with ourselves, isn't it? Than like, oh, now I'm a saboteur as well. Oh, Sarah Fletcher has just said she's got some work with the University of Zurich. That is extremely exciting. I am not surprised, but I am delighted because Sarah is fab and she's going to do really well with academic institutions who I do count as corporates, in terms of like the course in this group. Oh, well done, Sarah. That's so good. I have to catch up with you and find out more about it. That is really good news. Okay, so what sort of things are getting into your head? So one of the ones I hear come up is, I'm too small. So I'm too small. They're a big, huge organisation, and I'm too small. I don't have a big team. I don't have all sorts of, HR teams, IT teams, all sorts of specialists. It's just me, or it's just me and maybe a few other people, maybe some freelancers. Another thing that gets into people's heads is, I'm not like them, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more when I come to talking about the difference. Another thing people think is, I'm not good enough to work with corporates. So they're like, I'm okay over here doing my own thing, working with consumers and working with other small businesses. I can't really, like, that's a big step up. I'm not good enough to work with them. Sometimes that's about two things. One can be the fear about actually going and working with corporates and the level of quality they'll demand from you, but sometimes it can be back to that thing about how you feel yourself inside and feeling actually it's not your work that doesn't feel good enough, it's you that don't feel good enough. Another thing that can happen is you get into your own head about not belonging. So you look at a corporate environment and think, oh, that doesn't look like my office. I don't dress like that. I don't talk like that. I don't walk like that. I don't look, sound, or feel anything like that. And that, I would say, again, is about that difference piece. And we'll come back to that in a second. It could also be that you are scared of failure. But I actually see a lot of entrepreneurs more scared of success than they are of failure, because failure is a fairly predictable outcome, isn't it? Like, well, if you get into your own head about failing, think, well, if I've failed before, and most entrepreneurs have failed at something, like none of us have said, no, absolutely, from the second I incorporated my business, from the day I said I was an entrepreneur, nothing has gone wrong. It's been a seamless journey, it's been absolutely perfect, flawless, no wrong turns, no wrong decisions, no wrong hires. Everything has gone so smoothly, it's a dream. Like, I've yet to meet the entrepreneur who's like, no, that's actually my journey, it's just been flawless the whole time. All of us have had something go awry somewhere in our business, and especially in this start-up phase or then in any growth phases, something has gone wrong where we've had to recover from it and go, oh goodness, that's a bit of failure, I'm going to have to pick that up. So actually quite often entrepreneurs have quite a high risk appetite for failure. So they quite often, the fear of failure isn't actually as terrifying as the fear of success. Because when we've failed safe, or we've failed badly, and we've managed to pick ourselves up. So now we've taught ourselves that I can recover from failure. And actually, I see some people who actually love the failure. You know, they thrive on the drama and the crisis. And for those people, I tend to, I'll be honest, I tend to avoid working with them in this space, because it's not the right place for them. They have to fix that place of being in the drama triangle all the time before they actually move on and work with corporates. But I see some people terrified of the success. And I mean, that sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Why would anyone be afraid of success? Success is what we're all striving for in our businesses. Actually, some people are frightened of success for a number of reasons. A, because the level of success they feel they might get working with corporates is a success on a level or a scale that they haven't yet experienced, and that novelty is scareful for people. Scareful, that's my new word. Scareful. We're going to have scareful, replacing fearful and scared with scareful. It's actually, it gives people a bit of fear, because it's new, it's a new experience, and it's something that just, you know, makes people feel uncomfortable. The other thing that people can be worried about feeling with success, especially if you are in the category where you feel that you've always felt a bit different, or that you feel quite different from people in a corporate space, because what you're probably quite used to experiencing is a lot of judgment and a bit of that outsider feeling. Suddenly, if you become a huge success, are you going to feel even more of an outsider? Are you going to feel even more in the spotlight when you've been trying to blend in, you've been trying to hide the fact that you don't maybe feel the same as everyone else, you feel a bit different? So sometimes that fear of success is a little bit about having your head up there and people seeing you, and it's actually then getting the coverage for that, whether that's financial or whether that's attention. That can really be quite frightening for people, or scareful, as my new word is going to be. So those are some of the things that can be going on. I could probably talk for the whole session today about different things that get into the headspace of entrepreneurs that make them think that they can't work with corporates, but these are the main ones I want to cover today. So why does feeling different matter when you go to work with corporates? And this comes up a lot of the time with a lot of people in this group and people that I work with. And I sometimes joke that if you are a straight, white, able-bodied man who's an alpha male, the thing you need to do to work with corporates is join the most expensive golf club you can, and I'll write your business plan. And that's probably going to work for you fairly well. Like, you're probably going to do okay from that. If you don't fit in that group, for any of the other reasons, for any of the reasons, and you might be a lot of those things on that list, but also some other things, then you're going to have to do something different. And I wish that was not the world we lived in, but it still is at the moment, which is why I want to gather up all the entrepreneurs, get us all working in corporate and change the world a bit that way. But at the moment, that's the reality of the world that we live in. So a lot of people in this group probably feel different for a number of different reasons. It might be that something about you is not the same as what you see in a corporate environment. And the more senior you go in corporate environments, the more homogenous the look is. Now that is changing, and some corporates have done fantastically well in changing it. Some of them have done it for good reason because they're good humanitarians. Others have done it purely for profit because they've realised that diverse and inclusive companies are actually making more money. So they've done it for that reason. But it's not completely changed. So there'll be lots, you know, if you took a sample of the people in this group and you took a sample of any boardroom, we're going to look quite different to that boardroom looks. And a lot of us, even who don't look different, are going to feel quite different because perhaps it's your race, perhaps it's your gender, perhaps it's your gender identity, perhaps it's your sexuality, perhaps it's your accent. My accent doesn't blend into that many boardrooms. Um, and lots of people love regional accents, but it's still about making you stand out. Perhaps you've always felt different because you've moved around a lot in your life, so you've got used to creating friendships, but then having to move on. So you're really good at creating relationships with people, but you never feel part of a group for long periods of time. Perhaps you've got an element of neurodivergence that means that you have always been struggling with that, and that's not maybe something that you always want to advertise. So you feel difference because you're keeping that part of you different. Perhaps it's something else. Perhaps it's something I've not mentioned. So apologies if I've not picked up on something. You're thinking, I can't believe she said that. Perhaps you're not able-bodied, and you have to have accommodation yourself or by others in order to participate in things. And perhaps actually you're not able-bodied and no one knows about it, and that's something you keep to yourself. So whatever your difference is, it doesn't matter. People don't get to like have a difference competition. I see some of that go on occasionally, but if you feel different, it can become even more challenging to go into an environment that looks very homogenous, that looks very samey. So the entrepreneurial environment can look a bit more diverse than a corporate environment, and I can see why there's a bit of a safety in that, because you can look around and you can find people who are like you. So I can look around an entrepreneurial environment. I could go to like a conference that's for small businesses, and I will find lots more people that I have things in common with than I will in some of the corporate environments I go into. So I get that you might be looking at that and thinking, oh, I feel even more out of place than normal, and I know it's hard work to be part of that. What I'm going to tell you is something that I hope is going to be a bit of a revelation for you. Your difference is what corporates are buying from you, because they have the homogeneousness, they have more of the same, they have lots of the same. Your difference is what they are buying. It is one of your unique selling points. And I really want you to believe that, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why. So I'm going to give you some examples, but I'm also going to tell you why in context. So when you work in a corporate environment, and I've worked in quite a few large corporate environments at different levels, and at quite junior levels, and at very senior levels, and at very junior levels actually. If I'm really honest, I've worked at both ends of the spectrum. And here's what I've found over that time. Corporates are just full of people. That's the reality, and they actually have lots of difference in them. But where that difference isn't celebrated and embraced, it doesn't become inclusion. And if you want to hear more about the difference between diversity and inclusion, go and listen to Sam Lobanzo. She talks beautifully and intelligently and so well about putting it into context. I'll just give you the short version, which is diversity's been invited to sit at the table, inclusion's been invited to speak. And where you see companies that do that really, really well, that is really powerful. Lots of companies don't do it that well. So what happens is that all that beautiful difference that they've collected in their employees, the edges kind of come off of that. And anyone who feels a bit different has probably done some normalising behaviour in groups. And I suspect probably anyone in this group has done some normalising behaviour at some point. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is playing down your difference a little bit. So where you've looked around and thought, I really don't look, feel, sound, or think like the people in this room or this group, and it's not that safe for me to express my difference, you've probably taken a little bit of the edge off of that difference just to fit in a little bit. For a lot of people who work in corporate environments for a long time, over time, that becomes their norm. So actually all that beautiful diversity and difference that they arrived with actually becomes a little bit more bland over time. And I hear people talk about when they leave, sometimes being able to get back to themselves, because that's what's happened. They've become part of a bigger, wider group, and their difference has kind of worn away. It's not changed inside them, but their external expression of it has changed. That means for corporate environments, it's really quite difficult to get diversity of ideas, because where you've not created that inclusive environment, what you've done is created people who, even if they think differently, start to express themselves in the same way. They start to put away all those wonderfully creative ideas, all those perhaps different perspectives and ways of looking at things. So what they get is more of the same, and they get something called groupthink. So when a problem comes up, people in the group just come up with the same old solutions, and everyone goes, yep, that's probably right, yep. Bob, yep, we'll go with your idea. Worked the last 42 times. Or actually it didn't, but we'll give it another go. So your difference of being able to come in and not be part of that, so not be part of the group think, not have had all your edges knocked off you where you think, oh, I just have to act as close to this group as I can to fit in. That is the beauty that you bring out to corporate environments, and lots of them know that and they value it. And when they're trying to make change, or they're trying to do something different, or they're trying to get different results, that is sometimes why they are seeking to work with you, because they know that you bring that in. And there are people who understand it explicitly, and there are people who only understand it intuitively. And they are great environments for you to go and work in, where your diversity and your difference is absolutely embraced. And I'll give you one example of a big corporate client that we work with, or a big government agency actually, that we work with. We were doing a piece of work with them for probably about 8 months. We were doing this piece of work, and it was building basically a toolkit, 20 tools it was. And when I say tools, they are, so some of them are online tools, some of them are documents, some of them are transactional elements for people to work with. So it's quite a complicated piece of work for about, I think the target audience is about 4,000 people, and they want people to move to using this tool set as a way to do a piece of work. So they're looking for really, really big impact in their industry, but it's an industry that comes under quite a lot of scrutiny, and what we knew is all the people who are the trade press will jump on this right away, and they will find any flaw. And we were launching it in a beta version, which is highly unusual for government to do. It's not something they're comfortable doing, because it means the flaws will be picked up and potentially in the media. So we had this idea as we got towards what this beta launch, that what we could do is get a challenge panel who would be very senior people in their field, who would come in, try the tool, see if they could break them, but also give us their honest feedback on it. And obviously we have to pay them. So our client said, yep, that sounds a great idea. We would want to sit in and watch this test happen, and we want to see the results of it before we go live. So off we went. Now, during the test, one of the people who's a previous chief exec of a very large, well-known organisation, a huge corporate, huge international corporate, and he's super smart. He was asking questions that no one else was asking. He was asking them from a different perspective. He was asking us questions and then giving us potential solutions and saying, well, the way I look at it is this. And his interaction with the tools from the perspective as a user was different from every single other person in that challenge panel. Now, they all added value, but he looked at it differently. And it really, the things he came up with, none of us saw it. We hadn't seen them when we were working on it, when we were designing them, or when we were in the alpha testing mode. It was superb. But I remember in the middle of the challenge panel, and it was mid-COVID, so everything was being done virtually. It was the first project I did beginning to end, actually, remotely during COVID. And in the middle of the session, this guy dropped me a private message, because I'd commissioned him to come in and help, and he said, I'm really sorry, I don't know if you know that I'm autistic and dyslexic, and I don't know if I'm being helpful or if I'm being disruptive, and I'm really sorry if I'm being disruptive. And I messaged him back privately saying, you are being very helpful. I'm sorry if it feels disruptive for you. It's really helpful for you. For us, we're getting exactly what we need from it. And it was really interesting afterwards to go back to him and have that discussion, because what was happening is he was looking at it through different eyes, and he was using a different neurology to assess it. Now, that's actually now given us a set of tools that are so robustly improved, because what we could do is improve them anyway, because he was looking from a different perspective, but also we made some major adjustments because he was dyslexic, and there were some things that came up And we had done some testing, we had done some assessment from an accessibility perspective, but there were some things coming up that he's a dyslexic person said, that's a very difficult thing for me to interact with. Like I just can't get what I need out of it. But the comments that he was making around some of the descriptions that we had used, and also some of the solutions he came up with to fix some of the stuff, they were phenomenal. And that client actually now always recruits someone with a neurodivergent background in order to do challenge panels and assess the work. It was extremely powerful. I would love to give the exact details of it, but I would have to get a full disclosure from them. But the reality was that he brought so much to that room by looking through a different pair of eyes and by expressing it in that way. Now, I now know that if I'm going to work with someone again on that basis, that I have to let them know, look, it's a safe place for you to express yourself in that way. Like it's, we're bringing you into challenge. Don't worry about disruption. The reality is that we didn't think of that at the time because actually we didn't know that about him. We just knew his skill set and we knew the background he had and we thought he will be great at that. But actually he brought a lot to it. So don't play down the fact that actually some of your difference is so crucial to some of the success of what you can do. So what type of people are in corporates? I'm just going to cover that a little bit. Hi Elaine, Elaine has joined us as well. So let me tell you what type of people are in corporates. Every kind of people. Corporates are huge employers. Some corporates will employ a few thousand people. Some corporates are employing, 170,000 people, 200,000 people, some of the biggest ones in the world, some even more. What I would say is they're just regular people, the same as you. And sometimes their environment does change, perhaps how much they are willing to be as creative and expressive about themselves, because that can be a part of the product of the environment. But the reality is they're putting their trousers on one leg at a time, the same as you. Or maybe they're not putting trousers on. It's COVID, who can see from the waist down? Sorry, it was COVID, so who can see from the waist down? But they're not so different from you. And I know that sounds hard to believe, but once you start working in corporate environments and you start winning clients, you'll realise that, yeah, they may have a different environment to you in a workspace. They may even have some different motivations from you, but they're still humans. They are no better and no worse than you are. And that's definitely something that I was definitely brought up to believe that I was no better or no worse than anyone else. We certainly were not as well off as most of the people that lived in the city that we lived in, but we were no better and no worse than anyone else. And it's a good philosophy for thinking when you are going into work in corporates that that's still the same. They may be more senior, more experienced, more junior, more adept in the corporate environment, but they are no better and no worse than you. Let me let you into a little secret though. They are probably more risk averse financially than you. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's a beauty in working in corporates of getting paid every week, fortnight, month, whatever you get paid. There is a beauty in the security of it being someone else's job to go and make sure money flows into the business, wherever it comes from, in order to pay your wages. So actually what you quite often find is that there are lots of people who work in corporate who would love to do what you do, but they are too financially risk averse. They don't have the appetite for that level of, but I'm going to have to make the money that pays my wages and perhaps pays other people's wages. So you might quite often find that they are more financially risk averse than you are. That doesn't mean they're just risk averse completely, because they may have different appetites for different levels of risk. But in terms of their personal finances, they're probably a lot more risk averse than you. Now, sometimes that could be for good reason. It might be that it's absolutely not the right thing for them to enter into self-employment and generate their own income, but it might just be that their risk appetite is not for that. It's something I notice is a big difference between entrepreneurs and people who work in corporate. But there aren't really that many other differences. Everyone's got some form of life outside of their work. Everyone's got the same fears and worries that you have. All the fears you probably have about fitting in with them, they have about fitting in with their exec or with their new team or the people in their office or whoever is in their environment. Everyone has those same base fears because there are primal fears that are related to us being rejected by the tribe. So that's what goes back to our primal days, where being rejected by the tribe meant you would perish. So most of our fears are all around that kind of rejection and the shame of it. And a lot of it comes back to that when you're thinking about not fitting in, and a lot of them will have those same fears. They'll just show themselves in different ways, and the thoughts will be different, but the underlying worry that they have will be the same. And if you're a person who's thinking, I'm not really a person who would work with corporates, like that's not who I am, I'm going to tell you something that is, I have absolutely found to be true. I found it true with people who work in corporate and people who are entrepreneurs and people who are entrepreneurs working with corporate. You are who you choose to be. That's exactly who you are. So if you choose to be a small business owner who has corporate clients, that's who you're going to be. That's who you are. We have a joke in my business. If a woman says she's a thing, she's a thing. And also, if a man says he's a thing, he's a thing. And that's about not questioning people. When they tell us who they are or they tell us what they are, we accept that. We don't question it. We don't look for other reasons. We don't try and dismiss it. And we don't try and say, oh no, you're actually this. If a person tells you they're a thing, they're a thing. And that's correct for you. You get to choose who you are. So if you choose now to be a person who works for corporates, that's who you are. And you just take all the steps forward to doing that from now on. And I know when I started working in corporates at a more junior level and I started to get more senior, I got some big promotions where sometimes I took like more than one step up the ladder. And I remember my boss sort of taking me into the room and I actually took quite a big jump and he said, you're playing in the big leagues now. And I thought, oh my goodness. And it got a little bit in my head. And he didn't mean it in a negative way. He was an amazing boss. But it got a little bit in my head. So the next time, like I went to a few of the next meetings, which was the same groups of people, I kind of went in with expectations on myself of like, well, what will people expect me to be like now? Like, what will I have to do? So I kind of overgave and overworked to kind of prove a little bit that I was actually worthy. I'd already gone through the interview process. I've been working my butt off for ages. I'd kind of already proved it, but it got a little bit in my head. And then I kind of noticed what I was doing. I'm quite self-aware of my behaviour and I recognised what was going on. I thought, I have to stop and just think about this. I'm already good enough to work at this level. These are the same people who were here last week. I just need to engage in the way I was engaging anyway. So I had to just like pull myself a little bit back and know that my own nature can be to that sort of overdoing and overgiving. And as I started to work in different levels in the organisation, what I realised is that, yeah, sometimes I would be going into more senior meetings, so you would feel a bit more pressure, which is kind of, just comes with the territory. But I would realise, actually, this is still just a bunch of people dealing with difficult situations, difficult problems, and they're all still just discuss. I kind of thought they would all have the answers. I thought when the time you got to like an executive committee or a risk committee that you go in, everyone would be like, because they've worked their way up and they're so smart and they're getting all the company's resources poured into them and people are bringing them tea, they've got no worries, that their whole lives are managed for them at that level. That somehow they would be almost faultless and something difficult would happen, they'd be like, well, this is how we fix it. And in reality what I found out is they actually weren't. They were just people who were used to making decisions without all the information available to them. They were used to taking risks. They were used to listening to other people and then going forward. Now, there's the people who never listen to anyone and just make a decision, but they tend not to be successful in the long term. But I realised, I started to sort of reflect on it and think, actually, people haven't really changed as they've got into these more senior positions. They've got more accountability, they've got more experience, but they're actually just still the same people. And people would talk, over coffee about not necessarily problems they're having at home, but they maybe make jokes about, having their teenagers or, oh yeah, we're off on holiday. And just the little human things that it would really like just sink at home to me that it is still just people who work in corporates, whatever level they're at. And actually, no matter what frills come with the job and what benefits, they're all living very similar experiences to all of us. So that's the kind of people who work in corporates, the same kind of people that we are. We just have some different experiences and some different pressures and some very same pressures. So what can you do about this? What can you do about thinking about getting out of your own mindset? Just looking at the comments here a bit. So this is where hopefully you've had a chance to grab a pen and a bit of paper, because I want to talk to you about some things that are really special about you that I want to remind you of for you working in corporate, and I want you to write some of them down. So here are the reasons that corporates love working with small businesses. I'm just going to check my notes, I don't want to miss any of these out. So here are the reasons when I talk to corporates about working with small businesses, the things that they tell me they love about working with you. Okay, these are the things that they really value about working with you. You're unique, you're entrepreneurial, you're creative. This one comes up all the time because they don't have the same creative pool a lot of the time. You can manage risk on your own. You have lower overheads. You have a business that you've created from nothing, from your head. And you have a great product or service for corporates, and sometimes you don't even realise it. Okay, so here's what you're going to do with a pen and piece of paper. You're going to take some notes now. So the next time that you're thinking about working with corporates and you get a bit in your own head and think, oh, I don't know if I'm the right person, or whatever those worries that come up that we talked about earlier on are, whatever gets into your headspace, here's what I want you to remember, these amazing things about you. And you're going to write these down, and then I'm going to give you a final little practical tip at the end that you can do for when you're about to have a discussion with corporates. So here's what you're going to write down based on, remember this is based on what corporates love about you. So you're going to write down, I am unique, I am entrepreneurial, I am creative, I can manage risk, I have lower overheads, I have a business that I created, I have a product or service that's a great offer for corporates. And you can use that list if you're going to be speaking to corporates. You can read, and there'll be some that will really resonate with you more than others. You can add to the list. You can take away from the list, but only if you exchange it for something else. But the next time that you're going to start engaging with corporates, you can use those statements to just say to yourself, because this is about telling your brain it. It's not you just having it in your head, you want to say it out loud, let your brain hear you say it, because that's about you choosing who you are. You get to choose who you are, and you're already every one of those things if you have a business. You're already every one of those things. They are not a journey for you, they are already something that you're doing. So this is already a really strong foundation for you to move forward from. You're not starting from scratch, you're already starting on this really solid foundation. And the final tip I'm going to give you today is about going into those corporate conversations if you start to feel a bit of the fear. And I do love that sort of idea of feel the fear and do it anyway, because the reality is that we're never going to get rid of fear. We actually shouldn't get rid of fear, because it would make us do reckless and dangerous things. It would endanger ourselves and the whole species. But we should be able to recognise fear and then choose what we're going to do in response to it. So we get to be really deliberate about our response to fear. And sometimes if you're going to go into a corporate conversation, or it might even be you're going to send out a newsletter, or you're going to update your LinkedIn profile, it could be anything you're going to do where you're putting yourself out there to work with corporates, and you suddenly feel your stomach and you feel, oh, that's not great, I can feel all the adrenaline, and it's giving you the fear and it's giving you the stress. So it might be adrenaline, might be cortisol, depends how it shows up for you, but suddenly you're a bit jingling, a bit like you've had 10 coffees, and it's starting to get to you. And here's a little thing you can do. This is what I do if I've got something big to do, and I've got better at it over time. When I feel the adrenaline arrive, so when I feel the physical symptoms, I feel it in my stomach, my mouth will be dry, I feel like the sort of, the tingling of the adrenaline arriving, I think, oh, great, that's adrenaline arriving. That's the energy I need to go in and do really well now. And the more that I've told myself that, the more that has become the truth. So I've been for some big interviews, I've been cross-examined in court as on behalf of a corporate in the middle of a very unpleasant situation, with lots of experiences where it's been a positive outcome potentially, or a negative, and it's the exact same thing, the way it rushes into your stomach. If you're going to speak on a big stage, adrenaline rushing into your stomach, you can't tell, oh, that's the good adrenaline, or that's the bad adrenaline, that's the one for me to run from a tiger, or that's the one for me to run out on stage and be like, hey, I'm here and I'm delighted to be here. And that might not be your response to being on a stage, but that physicality doesn't feel any different. Like running from tigers, doing something exciting, doesn't feel any different inside your body. The bit that we can change is this bit. It's how we think about it when we feel it. So when we feel that physical change, just do that thing of welcome it. And that's, I'm not really being woo here. This is just about reframing it in your brain. So we welcome it and we decide what we're going to do with that energy. Great, that's an energy boost. What am I going to do with that energy? Oh, I'm going to use it now to be really good and really passionate speaking to that corporate panel, telling them how good I am. Oh, I'm going to use it now to go out on stage. I'm going to use it to finish this LinkedIn French press and go on this LinkedIn profile that I've updated, or sending this newsletter, or putting something out there. I won't say think what's the worst that could happen, because that actually will take you into a negative spiral. Think, what's the best that could happen here? What's the best thing that could happen here? I could go out here and be amazing. Oh my goodness, I could send this press go in this newsletter and 50 people could read it and think it's amazing. So think much more in that way. So that's my final tip, is around managing that physical response to the mindset issues, because our minds are in our bodies. These things are not disconnected. So what have we covered today? We've covered what kind of things might be getting in your head. We've covered why you might feel different, and why actually we want to embrace that difference and take it into corporate environments. We've covered what type of people are in corporate environments. Spoiler alert, all types of people. And we've covered what we're going to say to ourselves, and what we're going to remind ourselves about our strong foundation of being unique, entrepreneurial, creative, managing risk, having lower overheads, having created a business, and having a great offer for corporates. And then what can we do, like just a quick little physical response to any of the fears that crop in. So I hope you found that really useful. If there was something in the mindset space that you really hoped I was going to pick up on today that I haven't, then feel free to drop a message into my Facebook group and ask me, and I'll do a little live on it, or I'll respond to you on that. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.